Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Founders in LA podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight through a product lens on some of the exceptional startup founders we have as part of the LA community in an unedited, one take organic conversation. With us in the studio today is Eric Wengrowski. Thanks for coming down, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Ethan.
This is going to be exciting. I love what you guys are working on, so I'm excited to chat more with you about it. But first, a word from our sponsors. Founders in LA is brought to you by Unita. Unita Club is a co-working space that sets itself apart. With locations in El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, and Hermosa, Unita is where creativity flourishes. Unlike traditional offices, they provide an inspiring environment where ideas can thrive and businesses can grow. With Unita, there's no hidden fees, flexible terms, options for dedicated offices, and unlimited access to conference rooms, a photo studio, this podcast studio, plus standard and 3D printers and 24/7 access to any of their locations. They're local champions who support neighborhood businesses, open their event spaces to nonprofits, and to celebrate art, music, and culture. Join Unita Club and experience co-working like never before. Learn more at www.unita.club, www.unita.club. We're also brought to you by the Product Manager Association Los Angeles, available at pma.la. They're the largest professional organization for product and designers in LA. With more than 5,000 members from over 500 companies, they host monthly meetups, organize the Product Leader Council, have a mentorship program where they connect working product managers with students from underrepresented groups to build a better, more diverse next gen, and are hosting a conference dedicated to AI where they're focusing called LA Tech Connect, where they are providing AI's influence on the workflows in product, design, engineering, and technology. Be hosted at UCLA at November 9th. For more information, go to latechconnect.com or pma.la. Our guest today is Eric Wengrowski. He's the founder and CEO of Steg AI. Eric, can you just give us a 30-second description of Steg?
Sure. Thanks for the intro. So Steg AI makes invisible forensic watermarks, and we do that to help protect and authenticate digital media assets. So anytime you have a picture or video, we can embed information in it that you and I can't see, but it is visible to our algorithms.
Wow. All right. And so in this world of generative AI and all the tools that are coming out, people can manipulate anything, like not anything, but actually, I guess anything. They can manipulate images very easily without having to have the skills of Photoshop anymore. The importance of knowing what is real and what's been deepfaked is incredible. So is this kind of one of Steg's wheelhouses? Is this like a solution? Probably not your core product, but it's probably one of your abilities is to say, hey, this is the real deal. This isn't something that someone else said. I forget what the great example before. It was like the Pope wearing Nikes or something. Like, this is not legit.
The puffy jacket or
the
something.
puffy jacket. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, generative AI is like a super interesting space. And, as you said before, the fear back in the day was always, okay, people are going to use Photoshop to make, imagery that looks convincing, but is inauthentic. And we actually saw that like state actors would do this all the time. You would see tanks photocopied essentially on a beach, so it would look like an army was bigger than it really was.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, that's been kind of taken to the next level with the democratization of these really powerful generative AI tools that kind of allow anybody to do this. And what we've seen is that seeing is no longer believing. It's not good enough just to take an eyeball to a photograph or a video and say, hey, is this real or has this been manipulated in some way? The technology has gotten to the point where it's not easy to make that judgment call. And the technology is going to continue to advance, right? Generative AI is only going to get better and better and be more and more convincing. So, the way we look at it is it's not enough just to know whether or not something is inauthentic or came out of generative AI or Photoshop versus organically came out of a camera. We just want to be able to provide information to the end user might be a publisher, might be somebody, reading the newspaper, exactly where these assets that they're consuming came from. So they can make a call as to, is this something that's trustworthy or not? So there's a slight distinction between, hey, this is a, I'm identifying that this image is a deep fake and therefore it's dangerous and, don't trust it at all. There's lots of legitimate use cases for generative media, but we're kind of just helping the world understand where those assets are coming from so they can make those judgment calls for themselves.
That's fantastic. And I think from looking at the site as well, you also deal in the kind of watermarking for files, not just photos and videos. But I know when I was, worked at some of the big entertainment industries, one of the challenges was how can we prevent these things from getting out to other people, and how can we maybe know whose version of the copy, whose version went out. And things I'm specifically thinking about is like when things are up for, when movies and TV shows are up for nominations. Back in the day, they used to have DVDs they would send out, but then they moved it to digital. But then you're getting really close to that line of, who can download this and use this for good and for, for your consideration versus who's going to download it for profit.
Totally. You're reminding me, I remember when I was a kid, I would go over a friend of mine's house, would always get bootleg movies. And the Oscar copies were always the good ones. They were the high quality ones. It wasn't just a guy with like a camcorder in a movie theater. But yeah, there's leak protection is a big part of our wheelhouse at Steg AI. So, we want to provide a way for our customers to secure their digital library, to share it, use their existing work streams, work with the teams that they're used to working with, the software that they're used to working with, but know that if those assets get leaked, we can say who's responsible. And we're doing that now.
That's incredible. And I believe that, your logo is a Stegosaurus, but the origin of the name is part of actually the product, right?
Yeah, so it's a silly little joke, but the technology that powers our product, excuse me, is called steganography.
Steganography.
Yeah, and steganography is the art of hiding information within another medium. So yeah, when we were just coming up with ideas for team names before we even formed a company, we started playing around with using a Stegosaurus, and we were originally going to call ourselves Stegosaurus AI, and then a friend of mine texted me, "Hey, how's Steg AI going?" And I was like, "That's a better name. We're going to use that."
So just via text.
Yeah,
company name via text.
Just laziness. Yeah.
And we don't need to go too deep into the technical, but the idea of steganography is that you're hiding it almost in plain sight. So it's instead of, showing someone a code, you're like, oh, this is a code I can break. It's actually hidden within the image, within the file. So it's not blatant saying, hey, this is something that you just a code you should crack. This is safe. You need to open. You may not even know it's there. And that's part of the beauty of what Steg is able to do.
Yeah, so there's kind of two concepts that you're talking about. There's steganography, which is information hiding, and then there's cryptography, which is information scrambling, essentially. And really in our products we use both, but our core technology, that makes us unique is our steganography technology, and steganography has been around for a long time. It's actually kind of an ancient art, and watermarking has been around for 30 plus years in the digital world. What makes us unique is all of our tech is based on deep learning. So we don't come up with rules about how we're going to hide information. We train algorithms that do that, and we do it in such a way that we make sure whatever we're watermarking, whatever our steganography is, it's going to be very robust to the changes that occur throughout the life cycle of an asset. That sounds like a lot of jargon, but really it just means I'm going to watermark a picture, and then that picture is going to be compressed, and other things are going to happen to it downstream. I still want to be able to get that watermark out later.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the key pieces for us is doing this in a way that's invisible. So we've actually developed our own algorithms, also based on deep learning, that model the human vision system specifically for watermarking and steganography, so we can make sure that, you know, when we're training a new algorithm, we know that it's going to be perceptually very clear for people, and you know, you and I can look at these images and not see anything there.
That's fantastic. How did you get here? How did you come to start this company?
Do you want to hear the long story?
Let's go for like the mid version. We got like a 30-minute podcast here.
Okay. So, so I did my undergrad at Rutgers. I'm from New Jersey originally. I was
hence the bootleg videos.
Jersey pride. So, you know, while I was there, I didn't know how to program coming into school like a lot of my classmates did. But I liked computers. I was interested in computers and electronics and just wanted to kind of focus there. I didn't have to take so much chemistry courses. And I was always really interested in entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, I thought it would be fun to kind of work on something for myself rather than, you know, I didn't know any entrepreneurs, but it just, you know, seemed really appealing and cool to me. So, you know, I get through undergrad. I didn't actually like electrical and computer engineering much until I discovered a class called robotics and computer vision, where all of a sudden, you know, eureka, you know, it was a real profound moment for me where I was like, oh, this is why we're learning all these different concepts. I can see how really how the mechanics of the human brain decision making work, you know, algorithmically, really appealed to me. So with my professor, I worked on a kind of senior design project with her, and said, she asked, you know, what do you want to do after you graduate? I said, well, I'm going to start a company. She was like, cool. But you know, you only have an undergrad degree, and you know what nobody tells you when you're going into undergrad is, you know, you come out knowing what you don't know.
Right.
You know, you don't come out being able to, you know, rewrite Windows operating system yourself or anything like that. So she's like, why don't you become a technical expert? And, you know, to do that, why don't you join my lab as a PhD student? And so that was Kristen Dana, who later became my co-founder at Steg AI.
Oh, wow.
So, so I joined her lab. I did a PhD. You know, my first project was all about, you know, how do we hide information in images and then have these images, you know, go on screens and transmit this information through light and pick it up with a cell phone camera. I thought it sounded really hard and really cool. So I picked it as a project, and I didn't know that I'd end up spending 6 years of my PhD, you know, continually working on new versions of the technology, refining it, publishing papers, you know, eventually getting into some really good conferences like CVPR. And then at the end saying, you know, I think there's something here. I think, you know, there's a way for us to productize this, and, you know, maybe this can be a startup idea. So we enrolled in a program called ICOR that the National Science Foundation runs. It's really designed to get scientists and researchers out of the lab and to talk to people in the real world, and help you make decisions about product market fit, and hypothesize, you know, if you have a potential product and what it might look like, who you might sell it to, all these kind of the early formations of a startup. So I did that. I formed a team with Kristen and Roan Baldwin, and they became the first people after we graduated that program, after I finished my PhD, that I started Steg with. And yeah, I mean, it was kind of a long, circuitous journey, but it's been really interesting every step of the way. Every step's been very different.
Well, it sounds like it combined, you know, two passions. You said you always had an interest in entrepreneurship, and then you just kind of like found something that a solution or a problem set or a problem area that you're just like, this is fascinating for me for at least a paper. And then you kept building, and the more you dove into it, the more it drove you. And then at the end of it, it makes sense that that's the direction you took. So how did you go from, now PhD, went through the program, to finding your first customers?
That's a big question, right? I think, I came out of grad school anticipating that, I've got this technical knowledge. I know how to program now. But I know machine learning, I know AI and computer vision, really, at the, still and at the time, kind of very exciting fields. But, there's a big translation between putting together state of the art technology and productizing it.
Right.
And, the first thing you need to figure out is, who really wants this? And I think one of the biggest learnings we had through iCore in doing customer discovery, we ended up speaking to over 200 different people to test hypotheses and product market fit, is that lots of people are like, yeah, that's cool. But that's actually not what you want to hear. That's a soft no. That's a maybe. Once we really started talking to professionals and drilling down into, what does this individual really care about for their job? We got better at, figuring out, okay, who's a potential fit down the line, who's not a fit, who's a fit right now, who's got a big shark bite problem that we got to stitch up, or, who's got their house on fire that we need to put out. And so I became active in a couple of great trade organizations, one being the Digital Media Licensing Association, DMLA. And just through that, I was referred to our first big enterprise customer through one of my colleagues there. And I can't say who it is because we're under NDA with them.
Right.
But it's a company you'd recognize. I've actually seen some of their products in this building. And I mean, that was a great kind of learning opportunity for us, right? Like, finally finding the beginnings of that product market fit with that customer, testing our own hypotheses on like, okay, what are we building? What do we think people are going to want? What do we want? And then, getting that validation and learning more, and then saying, okay, how do we do this for the next one and the one after that?
That's phenomenal. Part of what it comes down to is, the 200 customer interviews, right? Or testing hypotheses with different folks to identify, is this a good fit for you? And then it also comes down to joining a professional trade organization and finding someone who could be a champion for you. And then they connected you with one of the right people.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, like, coming out of the academic world, I really didn't know much about what most people's jobs were. Like I knew what programmers did, right? I knew what like machine learning scientists did. And then I kind of had like a vague idea of like what accountants did, like I had no idea what product managers did or biz dev people or anything like that. And it was really through that process of, working with really fantastic mentors and like Ron and Kristen, and talking to so many different people, so many different, professionals that they were able to connect me with and that we were able to find, really learning what these jobs are and then kind of figuring out, okay, how do we navigate, this space, and how do we talk to the right people, and, who are those people? What's the profile for them?
That's phenomenal. And, congrats on where you guys are right now. And it sounds like a terrific history, but also a very bright future. I think, to your point, the need to be able to have these watermarks and to have them be difficult to crack or difficult to even find is only going to be, exponentially more important in the next few years, as the ability to create content, the bar is lower. And so, I'm just thinking just in terms of like, scammy stuff, which is way below what you're doing, but, scammy stuff is going to get way more realistic and way harder to determine if it's real or not. And to your point, you may not even be able to trust your own eyes to some extent. You actually may need to have a technology help you believe what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for a long time, people, only had to consume and make judgment calls on so much information, right? Like the bandwidth for people to process information is, relatively narrow. But because, as you said, like content has become so cheap to produce, and social media has like really supercharged, kind of bombarding us with content. I think we need more tools to help us, make the right decisions. Stay safe online. Um, I think like when imaging technology was first being developed, it was all about how do we make pictures look good? How do we make it so I can send it between my computer and my phone, and it won't be huge,
Right.
or it won't take forever. And I think we've largely solved those problems. I think now it's more, how do we how do we construct an ecosystem that's more livable, that's safer, and so I think like the next wave of technology and tools in this space is really designed to address that need more so.
Well, thank you so much again, Eric. I couldn't agree more. You guys are doing some important work, and excited to have you as part of the LA ecosystem here, and grounding this in Los Angeles. Love to end with asking you what's your most LA thing.
Well, the first thing that came to mind is, we're actually based in Irvine, which is in Orange County, and having to explain that we're just south of LA and not in LA is my prototypical LA experience. But maybe it's being able to go to Taylor Swift concerts at SoFi Stadium. I mean, that's pretty good too.
And we're recording this not long after the Taylor Swift mania. There's 3 sold out nights at SoFi, and it felt like the entire city somehow managed into that one stadium in the course of 3 nights.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Eric. Our guest today has been Eric Wengrowski. The company is Steg AI, available at steg.ai. I'd like to thank our sponsors again, PMALA and Unida. I'd like to thank you all for listening. And if you enjoy what you're hearing, please smash that subscribe button. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Founders in LA.